to welcome everyone to our Policy 101 video series that we're going to be doing over the summer. We were looking at ways that ILMEA can best serve its members, best serve music educators here in Illinois. And something we keep hearing over and over and over is people wanting to know more about policy and what they can be doing about it. And so that's our goal for this summer series. We're going to look at what is the current state of music education and more broadly fine arts education in Illinois. What do educators need to know, and what can and what should we be doing, and hopefully bring in some stories from educators around the state too. I'm very happy to introduce Lauren Rupert. Lauren was, for 7 years, a middle school choral and general music educator, and now she is working on finishing her Cultural and Educational Policy Studies master's degree at Loyola University. And Lauren is going to be ILMEA's policy and advocacy intern for the summer. So we are so happy that she is on board. Lauren, anything else that you want to say by means of an introduction, or something that I forgot that would be helpful for people?
I think that's pretty good, but thank you. I'm just so excited to be here and to be working on this, because it's definitely a subject that is important, but really hard for educators to take the time to kind of sort through and research on their own.
Right, and that's something we've talked about too, is wanting to make this more approachable for people, easier to digest, and also, like you said, better understand what they can, what they should be doing about it. So. All right, so let's start with where we are today, what the current state of music and fine arts education policy is in Illinois. So can you just give us a little bit of an overview or a primer on what Illinois currently has in place?
Yeah, so Illinois is in a pretty good place. We have a lot of great requirements and laws in place to ensure that music is happening in our schools. So Illinois does list the fine arts as a fundamental learning area, which is extraordinarily important, as we know. And the law states that all school districts should ensure that instruction is available in each fundamental learning area. So the combination of those two things means that we do require that the arts are taught in the school. We are lucky that we do specify that music needs to be included as a course offering in elementary and in high schools. So that's good, because if you just kind of broadly say the arts are required, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're requiring music. So we're lucky in Illinois to have separate specified language that music is required. We do, however, we don't have a seat time requirement. It just says that the time allotment is left up to local school boards. So each individual district in Illinois is going to look different when it comes to how much music is offered. And then we do have music as an option required for graduating from high school in Illinois. So we are, music is the we, so we are kind of lumped in with art, foreign language, or vocational education. So students from high school have the option to take music as one of their high school requirements. And that's kind of the broad overview of what we have in Illinois.
So when you mentioned like the seat time requirement, that could be anything from being left, that the seat time is left up to the local discretion. That could be anything to like 15 minutes every other week to 40 minutes twice weekly or daily for middle school and high school. So that part of it could vary pretty greatly then.
It could, absolutely. So it's just saying, it has to be offered. So you could do it every other week. You could do twice a week. There isn't really anything that specifies a minimum requirement, which we'll talk about later, but there are some states that do have that minimum requirement.
So let's actually just talk about that really quickly. What's going on in the surrounding states, and how does Illinois compare to what's happening?
Yeah, so like I said, there are a lot of good things that are happening in Illinois. So as I said, we do list the arts as a core academic subject, which a lot of Midwest states do, which is awesome. We value the arts in the Midwest. Actually, all of the Midwest states have arts education standards, which is pretty universal at this point across the country. And we also have licensure requirements for art teachers and grant programs that are related to arts education. One big area where we differ is referencing those high school requirements. It's not technically required in Illinois that you have to take an arts class to graduate from high school. Because we lump it in as an option with vocational tech and foreign language, it is possible that a student could graduate from high school in Illinois without having taken an arts class. Half of the Midwest states do actually have that high school requirement. So Michigan, Ohio, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, and South Dakota all have the arts as its own separate requirement. So you could take a course in the arts, and then foreign language would be a separate requirement. And that's technically where we tend to find the crossover, is foreign language and an arts class being substituted for one another.
And I'm guessing a lot of people are going to have questions about the foreign language requirement, because that is something that's coming down the pike in Illinois. So we're going to be talking about that, I think, later on in this series. So to anybody listening, we're so well aware of what's coming in regards to the foreign language requirement. And we're just going to have a bigger discussion on that later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah, and I guess one other quick thing is that there are a few states that don't have an arts alternative for graduation. So what we have is considered an arts alternative, right? You have that option to take an arts class. There are other states, like I said, some require the arts requirement, and then they don't provide an alternative. So Illinois is actually one of only 3 states in the Midwest that provides an alternative. Other states are a little bit more focused on, you have to take an arts class.
Okay. And I think one thing that kind of goes with our current state and how we compare, Illinois has the weighted arts indicator, which I think it covers a lot of bases in what we're talking about, because it's also a successful like grassroots policy thing where Illinois's indicator, and I'm not saying this terribly clearly, but Illinois's indicator on the ISB reporting, it's weighted. So it's not just, it has some teeth to it. So even though, it is lumped in with vocational ed, it is lumped in with foreign language, we do still have some weight that's given to it, which is a really good positive step, even though there are still more steps to be taken. So
yes, absolutely.
So speaking of more steps to be taken, I know you've been looking at just a really basic view of your first impression of what areas there are for improvement in Illinois, thinking about how we compare to the states around us. So what are some of your initial takeaways of room for improvement, or where Illinois can grow in terms of music and fine arts policy?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, one of the really great things about Illinois is that we do require that music is taught. But there are a few ways that we could kind of beef up that language that surrounding states have already done. So for one, Wisconsin has a line in their legislation that the classes must be taught by a licensed music teacher, which I think we know that we could probably guess that most of our classes are being taught by licensed music teachers. But that extra line in there really adds weight to the fact that, hey, this is an important class. You need to have someone who's licensed in the area to teach it. Another, like as we referenced earlier, would be getting that seat time requirement in. So Missouri is a state that has the seat time requirement. There are other states outside of the Midwest, but even mandating something as, hey, a minimum of 30 minutes a week, 40 minutes a week, so that it really is that designated time that's happening. And it's not an issue where, let's say, the music teacher calls out sick, guess we're just not having music. Really putting that emphasis on, this is an important class, you have to have the class time, even if the teacher is out. And then also, as we referenced earlier, this arts requirement for graduation would be really, really key of kind of separating that language out from foreign language, vocational ed, and saying you have to have a separate arts requirement. So it could be music, it could be visual art, dance, but just getting students engaged in the arts. Because as we all know, that's so valuable to their education and in a different way than foreign language is. Foreign language is still working your brain in a really important way, but it's different than actually creating art, as we all know.
And it doesn't have that group focus like some of
Yeah.
these, like our music classes and ensemble, and even, yeah, even like chamber groups or modern band. All of it is much more group focused than some of these other classes that are lumped in with music and fine arts.
Yeah, absolutely. That camaraderie is so important.
Hmm. So, um, so I think this is a really good place for us to start in terms of our understanding of where we are, how we compare room to grow. So this is just the first conversation in a series of conversations that we're looking forward to having with Lauren this summer as she delves even deeper into this work. I will encourage people, if you have questions, we want to make sure that the information that we're talking about addresses questions and concerns that people out there have. So if you do have questions, I'm going to point you to Lauren's email address, and that's advocacy@ilmea.org. And we'll be sure to drop it in the video description too. But just let us know what questions you have. Let us know what topics you'd like to see addressed. So that'll help us with our work over the summer. And Lauren, we're really excited that you're here, and we look forward to more conversations with you about this.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
All right. Well, we'll pick this conversation up next week. And in the meantime, have a good summer, everyone.